There is a particular kind of man who cannot stand being left. Not because he loved deeply, but because leaving was supposed to be his move. Braxton Osei had planned everything about that Saturday. The venue in the hills north of Atlanta, the 3,000 white roses, the guest list that read like a who's who of the city's development and finance world. He had planned the lighting for the outdoor ceremony and the playlist for the reception. He had approved the centerpieces twice. He had even, with great care, planned the moment his ex-wife would walk through the gates of the Hargrove Estate and see all of it. See him. See Lane on his arm, young and radiant and certain. See the life he had built and understand, with the particular sting of hindsight, exactly what walking away from him had cost her. What he had not planned was the convoy. 3 black SUVs, tinted windows, moving in tight, unhurried formation up the gravel driveway. No rush. No noise. Just quiet coordination, the kind that does not announce itself because it does not need to. The vehicles parked in a precise line near the entrance garden. The doors opened in sequence. 2 men stepped out of the first vehicle. Dark suits. Earpieces. The posture of professionals who are perpetually bored by the situations they are hired to prevent. They positioned themselves without speaking. 2 more followed from the third vehicle. Same economy of movement. Same absolute calm. Then the middle door opened. One of the groomsmen nudged Braxton's arm. "Bro. Who is that?" Braxton's jaw tightened before the door had fully opened. He already knew. Her name was Reya Cole, though it had not always been Cole. For 5 years it had been Osei, and then, 3 years ago, she had quietly set that name down on the kitchen counter along with her house key and walked out of the life Braxton was building into whatever came next for a woman who had just learned, without any drama at all, that she had already been replaced in the architecture of someone's plans. She had not screamed. She had not called her mother from the driveway or sent a long message to his phone in the middle of the night. She had not fought for the house or the savings account he controlled with practiced ease or the car registered in his name because, as he had explained patiently at the time, it just made more financial sense. She packed 2 bags. She took her laptop, a few books, and the small framed photo of her late mother that had lived on her side of the dresser throughout their marriage. She left the rest. At the time, Braxton had told people she was overwhelmed. That the pace of the life he was building had been too much for her. That some women, God bless them, just needed something quieter. He even seemed to feel genuine sympathy for her, the way a person feels sympathy for someone who could not quite get on the boat before it left the dock. What his circle did not know was the fuller version. The one that Celestine, his mother, knew and had quietly endorsed. The version that had been spoken, without caution, at Celestine's kitchen table not long before Reya left. Braxton had said he needed to start thinking about the life he actually wanted. That Reya, sweet as she was, carried herself like someone still figuring out the basics. That she had put on weight and stopped trying. That she did not photograph well at industry events, and twice he had caught important contacts looking at her a certain way, the kind of way that made a man in his position feel like he was explaining himself. Celestine had listened. Nodded. Said, "You've done enough, Braxton. You can't carry someone into a life they're not built for." He had agreed. He had felt, in that moment, almost noble about it. What neither of them knew was that Reya had been 3 rooms away, in the hallway outside the kitchen door, frozen with a glass of water in her hand, listening to the man she had supported through 4 years of building, 2 failed pitches, 1 near bankruptcy, and more late nights than she could count, describe her body and her presence as liabilities he was tired of managing. She stood there for a full minute. Then she walked back to the guest room, set the water glass on the nightstand, and lay down on the bed with her eyes open and the ceiling perfectly still above her. She did not cry. Not then. She filed it, the way she had learned to file things, neatly, without sentiment, in a part of herself that remembered everything. 2 weeks later she saw the message. It was a conversation between Braxton and his oldest friend, Theo, sent the night Braxton received confirmation of the Denton Group contract, the deal he had been chasing for 18 months, the one that would establish his consulting firm as something real and lasting. Theo had written, "Big night. What happens to Reya now that you're getting the bag?" And Braxton had replied, in the easy, unguarded way people write to old friends when they believe no one else is reading, "She served her purpose. I needed someone steady while I was climbing. She's good people, genuinely. But she doesn't fit where I'm going. I'll make it clean for her. Give her time to adjust, then move forward." Reya had been reaching for his phone to check the time, a habit she had when her own phone was charging across the room. The screen had been face up. The notification had been visible. She read it once. Set the phone back down. Went to the kitchen. Made herself a cup of tea. Sat at the kitchen table in the dark with the tea going cold in her hands while she let the full shape of it settle into her understanding. He had not lied to her face. He had not hidden another relationship or stolen from her or done any of the dramatic things that make betrayal legible and simple. He had simply told the truth to someone else. In many ways, that was worse. It meant the decision had already been made. It meant that everything she had believed was a shared life had been, from his vantage point, a useful arrangement with an already planned expiration date. She chose not to confront him. There was nothing to confront. You cannot argue with a man's private assessment of his own plans. She could have brought the message to him, watched him explain it away, watched herself choose to believe the explanation, because the alternative was this, sitting in the dark at her own kitchen table understanding that she had been a chapter in someone else's story and the chapter was closing. She chose not to do that to herself. She had already done it, quietly, in smaller ways, for longer than she wanted to count. She left the following Tuesday while he was at a client lunch. She called Dessa from the parking lot of her new apartment building, a furnished studio 3 miles away that she had quietly signed a lease on 2 weeks prior. "I'm out," Reya had said. Dessa had not asked why or whether she was sure. She had just said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do you need food?" That was the whole conversation. What came next was not a montage. It was not a clean rise from the ashes with a motivational soundtrack underneath it. It was a Tuesday evening in a studio apartment with a leaking radiator and a folding table she was using as a desk, eating crackers because she had not had the energy to go to the grocery store, staring at a job rejection email from a firm she had genuinely believed would say yes. It was 3 months of that. It was learning to sleep in a bed that did not feel like hers yet. It was going to the grocery store and calculating every item. Not because she was desperate, but because the savings had been his and the settlement had been smaller than anyone would have expected from a 5-year marriage, and she was starting from a number she had not started from since she was 22. It was Dessa appearing at her door one Sunday with containers of food, sitting across the folding table, and saying nothing except, "Eat. Then we talk." It was one night, just one, when everything landed at once. The rejection email still open on her screen. The radiator making its noise. The specific silence of an apartment where nobody was coming home. She sat on the bathroom floor of that studio and let herself feel the full weight of what had been said at Celestine's kitchen table. That she did not photograph well. That she had embarrassed him. That the body she had lived in, the presence she had brought into every room they shared, had been something he managed rather than something he loved. She sat with it. She let it say everything it wanted to say. She did not rush herself through it or talk herself out of it or reach for her phone to fill the silence. She just sat there on the cold tile and felt the full size of it. Then, when it had said everything it had, she stood up. Washed her face. Looked at herself in the mirror, really looked, without flinching. Went to bed. She never sat on that floor again. She started consulting independently. Small firms that needed someone who understood both the financial and operational side of a pitch. The first 3 months were slow enough to be frightening. She sent 17 proposals. 8 came back declined. 3 went unanswered. She sat with the silence of those unanswered emails the way she had learned to sit with difficult things, without rushing toward a conclusion, without letting the silence tell her something it did not actually know. The 4th month, 2 clients said yes in the same week. She kept going. Within a year she had 7 steady clients and had hired her first contractor. Within 18 months she had an office, a small team, and a reputation in Atlanta's mid-market development circles as someone whose red on a deal was worth paying for. Not because she was aggressive about it. Because she was right, consistently and specifically, in the way that makes people refer you before you ever ask. She also met Corbin. He came in as a potential client. A referral from a mutual contact. A brief introductory meeting, coffee going cold on both sides as the conversation stretched an hour past its scheduled 30 minutes because neither of them had wanted to stop. He was restructuring a failing real estate fund and needed someone who could see where the architecture of a deal had gone wrong. She had seen it in 12 minutes and told him directly. He had stared at her for a moment. Then said, "Nobody has told me that clearly in 6 months of meetings." "Because they want the retainer," she said. "And you don't." "I want the work to be right." He had not been impressed by her trajectory or her numbers, though he noticed them. What he noticed first was how she thought. How she held a problem without rushing it toward a conclusion. How she said difficult things without cruelty and true things without apology. He told her, much later, on a night when they were sitting on the porch of the house they had bought together, that he had known from the second meeting. Not that he would marry her. Just that she was someone he needed to know better, for as long as she would allow it. "I met you when you still thought you were the version he described," he said. "That's the woman I fell in love with. The one who wasn't finished yet. The one still deciding whether she was worth betting on." She had looked at him for a long moment. "That's not a comforting thing to say." "It's not meant to be comforting," he said. "It's meant to be true." They were married 2 years after the day they met. The invitation had arrived on a Thursday morning, cream envelope with gold embossed lettering. Braxton's handwriting on the back flap, "Thought you should be there. You always said I'd amount to something." Dessa had held it with 2 fingers, the way you hold something you are not entirely sure about. "He wants a reaction," she said. "I know," Reya said. "The correct response is the trash can." "I'm going to go." Dessa looked at her. "Reya." Corbin flagged something. Reya set the envelope on the counter and smoothed it once, a gesture that was almost absent-minded. "Felix Hurd is going to be at the reception. He's the managing partner at Meridian Capital. Corbin needs that introduction before the board quarter closes, and a relaxed social setting is significantly better than requesting a formal meeting." She picked up her coffee. "The fact that it's Braxton's wedding is almost coincidental." Dessa raised an eyebrow. "Almost." Reya said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. She RSVP'd that afternoon. "Ms. Reya Cole will attend. +1. The morning of the wedding, she sat at her vanity for longer than usual. Not because she was unsure about the dress. Not because she was unsure about going. She had made that decision and it was settled. It was the other thing. The thing she had not said out loud to anyone, including Corbin. She looked at herself in the mirror and thought about what Braxton had said at his mother's kitchen table. That she did not photograph well. That she carried herself like someone still figuring out the basics. That the weight she had gained in the later years of their marriage had made him feel like he was explaining himself at events. She had not forgotten it. She had filed it. But files could be opened. She sat with it for a moment. Let it say what it wanted to say. Then she looked at herself, really looked, the way she had learned to look at hard things, without flinching and without hurrying toward a conclusion. She looked like a woman who had rebuilt herself from a folding table and a leaking radiator into something she had not known she was capable of. She looked like a woman her late mother would have recognized. She looked like exactly who she was. She exhaled. Picked up her earring. Put it on. Corbin knocked once and opened the door. He was already dressed, reading the room without needing to be told what was in it. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes." She met his eyes in the mirror. "I will be." He crossed the room and stood behind her, his hands light on her shoulders. He did not offer a speech or a reassurance. He just stayed there, solid and unhurried, until she nodded once. "The cars are ready," he said. "So am I." The Hargrove Estate was breathtaking in the way venues are when someone has spent enough money to make beauty feel inevitable. Rolling grounds, white floral archways, 200 guests in their finest. A string quartet warming up near the rose garden. Champagne circulating on silver trays. Braxton stood near the terrace steps, working the early arrivals with the ease of a man who had rehearsed this version of himself until it felt like the original. He was mid-sentence when the first SUV rolled through the gates. Then the second. Then the third. The groomsman beside him went quiet. The guests nearest the driveway turned. The string quartet kept playing, unaware, filling the air with something bright and celebratory while the vehicles parked in a line and the doors opened in sequence. The security detail emerged first. For men, suits, earpieces, positioning themselves with the bored efficiency of people doing a routine job. The guests nearest the entrance stepped back, not from fear, just instinct. The kind of instinct that recognizes authority without being able to name its source. Then the middle door opened. Reya Cole stepped onto the gravel path of the Hargrove Estate in a deep copper dress that caught the afternoon light the way a woman catches a room, without trying. Her hair was pinned up, a few strands loose at her neck. She wore no statement jewelry. She did not need to. She stood still for exactly 2 seconds, taking in the grounds, then moved forward with the ease of someone who had places to be and had simply chosen to stop here first. Beside her, his hand resting light at the small of her back, was a man nobody at this wedding had seen before. Tall. Composed. The kind of calm that did not perform itself. The whispers started before she had reached the first hedgerow. "Is that his ex-wife?" She came with security. "Who is the man with her?" And then, from a woman near the garden entrance, loud enough for the 4 people beside her to hear clearly, "Wait. That's the woman he said couldn't keep up." Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. The question had already done its work. The woman who had said it looked from Reya to Braxton and back again, and the look on her face was the specific look of someone revising a story they had been told and finding the revision did not flatter the teller. She said something quietly to her companion. Her companion glanced at Braxton. Looked away. That motion, small and involuntary, that brief, visible recalibration, spread through the nearest cluster of guests like a temperature change. Nothing dramatic. Just a subtle, collective shift in who the room was looking at and what it was thinking while it looked. Braxton felt it from 30 feet away. He could not have named what he felt, only that the plan he had built this day around was no longer running the way he had drawn it. He had wanted her to see what he had built. He had not imagined his own guests would start revising their understanding of him while watching her arrive. Celestine found Reya within the first 15 minutes. She materialized at Reya's elbow near the garden fountain, champagne in hand, her expression set to the careful warmth she deployed for situations she had not fully categorized yet. Reya. The name landed like a small test. Celestine. Reya smiled at her. Genuinely. You look wonderful. The older woman's eyes moved, briefly and involuntarily, to Corbin. To the security detail at a respectful distance. Back to Reya. Something complicated moved through her expression. Not quite guilt. Not quite pride. Something in the difficult territory between them. You've done well, Celestine said. I have. No qualifier. No performance of humility. Just confirmation. Celestine lowered her voice slightly. He told people you needed something simpler. That the pace was too much. I know what he told people. Reya turned her glass slowly. People see what they're told to see. A pause. The fountain ran steadily beside them. Celestine looked toward the terrace where her son stood, laughing with Perry, performing the confident ease of a man at the peak of a very good day. She watched him with an expression Reya recognized, the expression of a woman who has just heard her own words played back to her from a distance and found them smaller than she remembered. "He doesn't know why you left," Celestine said. It was not a question. "No," Reya said. "He doesn't." She let the silence do the rest. Celestine walked away without another word, and Reya watched her go with something that was not satisfaction and was not forgiveness but was somewhere between the two, the particular stillness of a woman who no longer needed anyone in that family to understand her. Perry had clearly been rehearsing. He was the kind of man who treated a best man speech as a performance of his own loyalty, and he delivered it with the confidence of someone who has never seriously questioned whether the story he is telling is the whole story. He talked about Braxton's drive. About the years of grinding before the money followed. About the specific quality of ambition that keeps a man moving when everyone around him is settling. There was a period, Perry said, grinning at the room, when this man was working so hard he barely came up for air. He had someone at home, steady, good woman, genuinely good, but Braxton knew, even then, she wasn't where the road was going. He used to tell me, "She's good for the climb, Perry. But I've got a summit in mind." The room laughed. Most of it. At the head table, Lane smiled. Her eyes moved across the room and found Reya, as they had been doing all evening, pulled by the specific gravity of a woman described one way who looked entirely like another. Reya had not moved. She sat with her hands folded loosely around her water glass, her expression the same unhurried calm it had held since she arrived. If the toast had landed on her at all, nothing in her posture confirmed it. But the table nearest her had gone slightly quiet. And the table behind it. The woman from the driveway, the one who had said it out loud, looked at her companion again. The companion shook her head slowly, just once. Braxton, from the head table, felt the shift again. Not dramatic. Just the almost imperceptible change in a room's temperature when the story being told from the microphone stops matching what the room can see in front of it. He caught Lane's eye. She looked at him for a moment. Then away. That single motion told him more than any conversation could have. He found Reya near the garden's edge between courses, standing alone in the specific way she had always been comfortable being alone, as if solitude were a choice she was making rather than a condition she was managing. He sat down across from her without asking. It was the same thing he had always done. She noticed. She always had. "You look good," he said. "Thank you." She did not return the observation. He nodded toward the direction Corbin had gone. "Who is he?" "My husband." Something moved across his face. "You got married 2 years ago." He absorbed this the way he absorbed things he had not prepared for, slowly, without showing all of the processing. He had assumed, in the comfortable way people assume things they have not bothered to verify, that Reya's life after him had been smaller. Quieter. That she had retreated into something manageable. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I thought it was important for you to see this." Reya looked at him steadily. "I know why you invited me, Braxton." He shifted slightly. "I wanted closure. For both of us. You wanted me to hurt." Her voice was not accusatory. It was simply accurate. "You wanted me to sit in this beautiful place and look at your beautiful day and understand, finally, what leaving had cost me." He said nothing. Which was its own kind of answer. "The problem," she continued, "is that I didn't leave without information. I left knowing exactly what I was doing and exactly why." "What information?" he asked. His voice had gone careful. She was quiet for a moment. She had not planned to say it here. But he had asked directly, and she had spent 3 years carrying it cleanly, and she found she could say it the same way she had carried it. She served her purpose, she said. "She's good people, but she doesn't fit where I'm going." The color left Braxton's face. Visibly. Completely. In a single motion. "You read it," he said. "The night of the Denton contract. Your phone was face up. I was reaching for mine." "Reya." His voice dropped to something she had not heard from him before. That was just venting. I didn't mean. I also heard what you said at your mother's kitchen table, she said. 3 rooms away. With a glass of water in my hand. She let that sit for exactly the right amount of time. You said I didn't photograph well. That I carried myself like someone still figuring out the basics. That I had put on weight and you were tired of explaining yourself. The silence between them was enormous. I filed it, she said simply. Both of it. And when I had enough, I made a decision. He stared at her. His jaw was working but nothing was coming out. I didn't tell you I was trying, she said, because you had already decided I wasn't capable of it. And I didn't want to spend what I was building proving something to someone who had already made up his mind about me. She picked up her water glass. It turns out not having to prove it to you was the best thing that ever happened to my work. She said it without triumph. Without cruelty. The way you state a fact about the weather. That was the part that broke him open. The introduction between Corbin and Felix Hurd happened naturally over the cheese course, the way things happen at events full of people in adjacent industries who have not yet been in the same room. Felix had recognized Corbin's name from the Meridian Capital Board announcement, released quietly in the financial trades 2 weeks prior. The kind of news that people in the relevant circles had read and people outside those circles had not noticed. Braxton was not in those circles. Not yet. They spoke for 12 minutes. Braxton watched from across the tent with the growing unease of someone who recognizes that a conversation is important without being able to hear what is being said. He pulled out his phone under the edge of the table and searched the name. The results loaded. He read the first 3 lines. His hand went still. Corbin Atwell. Newly appointed board member, Meridian Capital Partners. Former senior partner, Atwell Group. Recognized for restructuring mid-size infrastructure consulting contracts across the Southeast. He placed the phone face down on the table very slowly, with the deliberate care of someone who needs a moment before they can think clearly. The Meridian contract. His contract. 40% of his firm's annual revenue, up for renewal in 8 weeks, which he had assumed was a formality. The partnership he had built his next phase of growth around. The man currently speaking with Felix Hurd, easy and unhurried, had just joined the board that would decide it. And that man's wife was seated 30 feet away, having a dessert course at a wedding to which Braxton had personally, carefully, deliberately sent her an invitation with a handwritten note on the back. His dinner sat untouched for the rest of the course. It was Lane who asked the question nobody else at the wedding had the position to ask. She found him at the bar between the dinner course and the cake, his drink untouched, his jaw doing the thing it did when he was working a problem that did not have a fast solution. Perry's toast, she said. He turned. His expression was already carefully arranged. What about it? Good for the climb, but I've got a summit in mind. She said it without inflection. Did you actually say that? About Reya. A pause that ran 1 beat too long. Lane. Braxton. Her voice stayed level. That was, he had always known, what made Lane formidable. She did not raise her voice when she was serious. She lowered it. Did you say that? He looked away. Which was, in its way, an answer. She didn't leave because she couldn't keep up, Lane said. Did she? It was not a question anymore. It was more complicated than the way I described it, he said. You let me believe she walked away from something that overwhelmed her. Lane's voice had dropped further, gone almost private. You let me feel sorry for you. Every time you told that story, you let me stand there feeling like the woman who came after the woman who couldn't handle you. Lane. Is that how you talk about me to Theo? She asked. When I'm not in the room. He had no answer. He had no answer to any of it that would not make it worse. Lane looked at him for a long, still moment. Then she reached up and unclipped the delicate chain at the back of her neck and removed the pendant he had given her at their engagement dinner. She set it on the bar. Quietly. No scene. No speech. Just the small gold piece on the dark wood between them. Then she removed the engagement ring. Set it beside the pendant. She picked up her champagne glass, took one small sip, set it down, and walked away from the bar without looking back. Past the head table. Past the dance floor that had not been used yet. Past the floral installation that had taken 3 days to build. Out through the side doors of the estate into the garden, where the lights were softer and nobody was watching. 2 bridesmaids followed. The ring and the pendant sat on the bar. Several guests nearby saw them. Within 4 minutes, most of the room knew they were there. Within 6, the string quartet had stopped playing, though nobody had asked them to. Perry, still holding his champagne near the dance floor, looked at Braxton from across the room with the expression of a man who has just understood, too late, that the story he told at the microphone was not the story the room needed to hear. Braxton stood at the bar alone. The ring and the pendant on the wood in front of him. The room, his guest list, his industry contacts, his carefully constructed day, rearranging itself around his absence. He had planned this wedding to show his ex-wife what he had built. What he had built was collapsing in front of the people he had most wanted to impress. Reya was standing near the garden wall when Dessa appeared beside her, quiet as always, reading the evening with the accuracy she brought to everything. Lane removed the ring, Dessa said. Reya was quiet for a moment. I know. You didn't plan that. No. A pause. But I knew Perry would tell that story if Braxton let him. And I knew Braxton would let him. He's never been able to resist an audience. Dessa stood beside her without filling the silence. I came for a business introduction, Reya said. That part is true. She exhaled slowly. And I came to find out if it still hurt. Being here. Seeing him. Seeing all of it. And? She looked out at the estate, at the lit windows, at the shapes of guests moving behind the glass. She looked at the place where she had expected to find an old wound and found instead something finished, closed, and hers. It doesn't, she said simply. Corbin appeared at her shoulder. He put his hand at her back, the same easy gesture he had made all evening, and waited. She reached back and took his hand without looking. Ready? He asked. Yes. She collected her clutch, said a quiet word to Dessa, and walked with Corbin back through the garden path toward the main driveway. The security team fell into formation without signal. A few guests near the entrance watched. Someone reached for their phone and then thought better of it. She paused once at the estate's entrance arch, where an older gentleman stood with a whiskey and the comfortable leisure of someone who has nowhere urgent to be. Leaving before the dancing, he asked pleasantly. I got what I came for, Reya said. He blinked. Which was? She smiled at him, genuinely. A useful introduction. And confirmation that I made the right decision 3 years ago. She kept walking. The 3 SUVs pulled away in the same quiet formation they had arrived in. Gravel soft under the tires. Tail light steady in the gathering dark. The Hargrove Estate growing smaller in the rear window until it was just light behind trees and then nothing at all. Braxton found the envelope the following morning. His assistant discovered it during venue breakdown, propped at the base of the check-in table. His name on the front in her handwriting, clean and considered, the same script he had watched sign her name to documents across 5 years of shared life. He sat with it at his desk for several minutes before opening it. Inside, a single card. No long speech. No inventory of grievances. 2 lines. Congratulations on the wedding. I hope you build something real this time. And below, smaller? Meridian will be in touch regarding the contract review. I recommend proper counsel. He read it 3 times. Then he set it flat on his desk and sat with it the way she had once sat with a cup of tea going cold in her hands, letting the full shape of something settle without rushing it. He thought about the message he had sent to Theo on the night of the Denton contract. He had typed it fast, in the warmth of celebration, without thinking about who else was in the house, reaching for a phone on a nightstand. He thought about his mother's kitchen table. About the words he had said while Reya stood 3 rooms away with a glass of water in her hand, listening. He had underestimated her. Systematically. Thoroughly. Without ever meaning to. And he was beginning to understand that not meaning to was not meaningfully different from meaning to. The woman he had described publicly as someone who could not keep up had shown up to his wedding with a convoy and a board member and left a card that was both gracious and devastating without a single cruel word. He picked up his phone and called his lawyer. In the car on the drive back, Reya leaned her head against the window and watched Atlanta move past in the late evening light. Corbin did not ask how she felt. He knew she would tell him when she was ready. After a while, she said, "He built something real. I want to be fair about that." He did, Corbin agreed. He just built it on a version of himself that wasn't honest. She watched the city. The version that says one thing to your face and something else when he thinks you're 3 rooms away. "Do you think Lane will be okay?" he asked. "I think Lane is smarter than he knew." A pause. "I genuinely hope she does what's right for her." There was no performance in it. No residual claim on the outcome of his life. She had not gone to break anything. She had gone as herself, fully assembled, honest about her reasons, and let everything else find its own level. She closed her eyes for the rest of the drive and slept the deep, uncomplicated sleep of a woman with nothing unresolved. He invited her to watch him win. She came back as proof that losing him was the beginning of her life.